The town hall in Millbrook was packed to capacity on the evening of the Bachelor's Choice Social. It was 1877, and the frontier town had far more unmarried women than men, a common problem in territories where danger and hardship claimed many lives. The town council had organized this event as a way to help both the lonely bachelors and the hopeful women find matches. The rules were simple. Eligible women would stand on the stage, and eligible men would indicate their interest. If both parties agreed, they could begin a formal courtship under the supervision of the community. It was not romantic, but it was practical, and in frontier towns, practical often mattered more than romantic. Lillian Foster stood on the stage with 11 other women, her heart pounding with a mixture of hope and dread. She was 29 years old, well past the age most women married, and she knew what people said about her. She was too big, too tall, too broad-shouldered. At nearly 6 feet and with a frame that suggested strength rather than delicacy, Lillian had been told her entire life that no man would want her. She wore a deep red dress she had sewn herself, the nicest thing she owned. Her blonde hair was arranged as prettily as she could manage, though she knew it would not matter. The 2 slim, pretty women standing beside her would be chosen first, as they always were. Her sister Margaret had tried to talk her out of coming tonight. "Lillian, you are just setting yourself up for humiliation. You know how these things go. You will be the last one standing, and everyone will whisper about the poor spinster who is too big to catch a husband." But Lillian had come anyway, driven by a stubborn hope that refused to die despite years of rejection. Maybe, just maybe, there would be one man who would see past her size to the person she was inside. The first bachelor stepped forward, a merchant named Wilson. He looked over the women and pointed to one of the pretty ones. "Miss Abigail, if you are willing." Abigail smiled and nodded, and they stepped aside to talk. The second bachelor chose the other pretty woman. The third chose a young widow with 2 children. One by one, the women were selected until only Lillian and 2 others remained. An older woman in her 50s who looked resigned, and a very young girl of perhaps 16 who looked terrified. Lillian felt the familiar burn of humiliation rising in her chest. She had been through this before, at church socials and town dances. Always the last one chosen, or more often, not chosen at all. Then the last bachelor was called. He had been standing at the back of the room, and as he walked forward, Lillian heard the whispers ripple through the crowd. This was Daniel Hartwell, owner of one of the largest ranches in the territory. He was perhaps 34 or 35, tall and well-built with dark hair and steady brown eyes. He was known to be successful, fair-minded, and one of the most eligible men in 3 counties. Every unmarried woman in the territory had hoped Daniel Hartwell would attend tonight. The fact that he had come so late suggested he had been reluctant, perhaps pressured by well-meaning friends who thought it was time he remarried after being widowed 5 years ago. As Daniel reached the front of the room, one of the men in the crowd called out, "Well, Hartwell, slim pickings left, but you can pick any girl you want. You have earned it." Another man laughed. "Better choose quick before someone else claims the good ones, though I guess you are stuck with what is left now." A third voice added, "Or you could just leave. No shame in that. Come back next month when there is better selection." The laughter that followed made Lillian want to sink through the floor. She was part of the poor selection they were mocking, the leftover, the undesirable, the woman no one wanted. Daniel stopped and looked at the 3 women remaining on the stage. His expression was thoughtful, showing none of the disappointment the crowd seemed to expect. He looked at the older woman with respect, at the young girl with kindness, and then his eyes settled on Lillian. For a long moment he simply looked at her, not the dismissive glance most men gave her before looking away, not the pitying look that said he felt sorry for her. He looked at her as if he were really seeing her, assessing her, considering her. Then he did something that shocked everyone. He stepped closer to the stage and looked directly at Lillian. "You, ma'am. What is your name?" Lillian's voice came out as barely a whisper. "Lillian Foster." "Miss Foster," Daniel said, his voice clear and respectful, "would you be willing to speak with me? I would like to know if we might suit each other for courtship." The room fell into stunned silence. Then the whispers started, louder now, spreading like wildfire through the crowd. "Her? He is choosing her? The big one? Is he blind? Daniel Hartwell could have any woman in the territory, and he chooses that? Must be desperate if he is settling for the giant." A man Lillian recognized as one of the local bullies, a rancher named Cobb, spoke louder than the others. "Come on, Hartwell. We said pick any girl you want, not the ox. You want a wife, not a plow horse?" The room erupted in laughter, and Lillian felt tears stinging her eyes. She should have listened to Margaret. She should have stayed home. But then Daniel turned slowly to face Cobb. His expression was calm, but there was steel in his voice when he spoke. "I am picking exactly who I want. Her. The one you call too big. The one whose name is Lillian Foster, who deserves to be spoken to and about with respect." He looked around, at the crowd, his gaze settling on each person who had laughed. "And if anyone in this room has a problem with my choice, they can speak to me about it outside. Otherwise, I suggest you keep your opinions to yourselves." The room went silent again, but this time it was a different kind of silence. The kind that came from people realizing they had crossed a line with a man who was not going to tolerate it. Cobb started to speak again, but his wife grabbed his arm and hissed something at him. He shut his mouth and looked away. Daniel turned back to Lillian and offered his hand to help her down from the stage. "Miss Foster, if you are willing, I would like to speak with you." Lillian took his hand, her own trembling. She was taller than most women, but Daniel was taller still, perhaps 6'3", and for the first time in her life, she did not feel like a giant. She felt like a woman being treated with courtesy by a gentleman. Daniel led her to a quiet corner of the hall where 2 chairs had been set up for conversations. As they walked, Lillian was acutely aware of every eye following them, every whisper about the odd pairing. Once they were seated, Daniel spoke first. "Miss Foster, I apologize for the rudeness you just endured. There was no call for it." "I am used to it," Lillian said quietly, then immediately wished she had not. It made her sound pathetic. "You should not have to be used to it," Daniel replied. "No one should be mocked for their appearance. Those people should be ashamed of themselves." He leaned forward slightly. "May I be honest with you about why I chose you?" "Please," Lillian said, bracing herself for whatever charitable reason he was going to give for taking pity on her. "I came here tonight not because I was looking for the prettiest woman or the most delicate one," Daniel said. "I came looking for a partner, someone strong enough to handle ranch life, someone intelligent enough to help me run a large operation, someone with the character to be a true equal." He smiled slightly. "When I saw you standing on that stage, taller than the other women and clearly strong, I thought you might be exactly what I need. Then when those fools started mocking you and you held your head high instead of crying or cowering, I knew you were." Lillian stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. "You chose me because I am big?" "I chose you because you are strong," Daniel corrected. "There is a difference. And yes, your height and build suggest you could handle the physical demands of ranch life better than someone more delicate. But more than that, your dignity in the face of cruelty suggests you have the kind of character I value." He paused. "Of course, there is more to compatibility than practical considerations. So I would like to know about you. What you enjoy, what you dream of, who you are beyond what I can see." For the next hour, they talked. At first, Lillian was guarded, waiting for the moment when Daniel would reveal this was all some kind of joke or mistake. But as they continued, she found herself relaxing, opening up in ways she never had with anyone. She told Daniel about her life, about growing up as the tallest girl in school, about the boys who had called her names and the girls who had excluded her from their games. She told him about learning to sew and cook and manage a household because people said those were the only skills that might make her marriageable despite her size. My mother always told me I needed to compensate for my appearance with exceptional domestic skills, Lillian said. She meant well, but it always felt like she was saying I needed to make up for being defective. Daniel's jaw tightened. You are not defective. You are different from societal expectations, perhaps, but that is not the same thing. Lillian continued, telling him about her love of reading, especially books about far-off places and adventures. She told him about her skill with horses, how she had always been able to calm even the most skittish animals. She told him about her secret dream of having a ranch of her own someday, of working outdoors instead of being confined to a parlor. I know that is not a proper ambition for a woman, Lillian said, but I have always felt more at home outside than in drawing rooms. That makes you perfect for ranch life, Daniel said. My mother tried to run my father's ranch from the parlor, directing everything from behind lace curtains. It never worked well. A ranch needs someone willing to get their hands dirty, someone who understands the land and the animals. Daniel told her about his ranch, about the 3,000 acres he managed with a crew of 10 hands. He told her about the challenges of running it alone since his father died 2 years ago, about his need for a partner who could share both the work and the decisions. My first wife, Caroline, she was a lovely woman but completely unsuited to ranch life, Daniel admitted. She came from back east, and she never adjusted to the isolation and the hard work. She tried, I will give her that, but she was miserable. When the fever took her, I think part of her was almost relieved to escape. His expression was sad, but not broken. I mourned her, and I still do in some ways. But I also learned that I cannot marry for the wrong reasons again. I need someone who actually wants this life, not someone who is trying to endure it. He told her about his own experiences of being judged, of people assuming he must be simple-minded because he chose ranching over the family's mercantile business back east. His older brother had taken over that enterprise and thought Daniel was wasting his potential on cattle and horses. I think people are very quick to judge what they do not understand, Daniel said. Quick to mock what is different. But different is not bad, Miss Foster. Sometimes different is exactly what is needed. As the evening wore on and other couples began to leave, Daniel stood and offered his hand to Lillian again. Miss Foster, I have greatly enjoyed our conversation. If you are willing, I would like to call on you formally to continue getting to know each other. I would like that, Lillian said, hardly believing this was really happening. As Daniel walked Lillian back to the boarding house where she lived, they passed groups of people still whispering and staring. Lillian tried to ignore them, but Daniel seemed to notice her discomfort. They will talk no matter what we do, Daniel said. The question is whether we care more about their opinions or about what we want for ourselves. That is easy for you to say, Lillian replied. You are respected. People might think you are making an odd choice, but they will not think less of you. I will be the woman who trapped Daniel Hartwell, who somehow tricked you into courting her. Daniel stopped walking and turned to face her. Lillian, may I call you Lillian? She nodded. Lillian, I do not care what people think. I have spent my entire life being judged by my choices. When I left the family business to ranch, people said I was throwing away my future. When I married Caroline, people said I was making a mistake because she was not suited to frontier life. They were right about that, but they were wrong to think I should have married someone I did not love just because she would have been practical. He took both of her hands in his. I am choosing you because I think we could build something good together. Not because I pity you, not because I have run out of options, but because I genuinely believe you are exactly what I need and what I want. The question is whether you believe that, whether you can trust it. Lillian looked into his eyes and saw nothing but sincerity. I want to believe it. Then give me a chance to prove it, Daniel said. Over the following weeks, Daniel courted Lillian properly. He came to her boarding house every Sunday afternoon to take her for walks. He invited her to his ranch and showed her everything. walking her through the barn and the pastures, introducing her to his horses and cattle, asking her opinions on improvements and listening to her ideas. "What do you think about adding a second well here?" Daniel asked one afternoon, pointing to a spot near the north pasture. "The cattle have to walk pretty far for water." Lillian studied the land, considering. "It would be good for the cattle, yes, but have you thought about irrigation? If you put the well here and ran channels to these fields, you could grow hay for winter feed. It would be expensive initially, but it would pay off in a few years." Daniel looked at the land with new eyes. "That is an excellent idea. I had not thought about combining the livestock water with irrigation." "My father was a farmer before he died," Lillian explained. "He taught me to think about how everything on a property can work together." "You have good land here, Daniel. You could do so much more with it." Daniel smiled. "See, this is exactly what I meant. You think about things differently than I do, and that makes you valuable as a partner." He introduced her to his ranch hands and made it clear she was to be treated with respect. The men, to their credit, seemed to accept her presence without question. A few even seemed impressed by her knowledge of livestock and her willingness to help with work. "She is not like most ladies," Lillian overheard one hand, a man named Pete, saying to another. "She actually knows what she is talking about. And she can lift a feed sack better than some men I know." Lillian discovered that Daniel was everything he had seemed, honest, kind, and genuinely interested in who she was as a person. More than that, she discovered he was right about their compatibility. She loved the ranch, loved the work, loved the challenges it presented. She had ideas about animal husbandry and land management that Daniel found insightful. She was not afraid of hard work or getting dirty, but more than the practical compatibility, Lillian found herself falling in love with Daniel. With his integrity, his kindness, the way he made her feel valued and seen. He never tried to make her feel small or less than. He listened when she spoke and gave weight to her opinions. He stood up for her when people made unkind comments. One Sunday they attended church together, and Lillian overheard two women talking behind her. "I still cannot believe Daniel Hartwell is courting her," one whispered. "She is so big and plain. What could he possibly see in her?" "Probably just needs a strong back for the ranch work," the other replied. "Men out here cannot afford to be picky about pretty faces when they need help with labor." Before Lillian could feel the familiar sting of those words, Daniel leaned over and whispered in her ear, "Shall we leave? I would rather spend the afternoon showing you the new foals than listening to small-minded gossip." They left church early, and Daniel took her to see 3 foals that had been born that week. Watching him gentle them with patient hands, Lillian felt her heart swell with affection. "Daniel," she said as they stood by the pasture fence, "can I ask you something? Anything. Do you ever doubt this? Us? Do you ever wonder if you made the right choice that night?" Daniel turned to look at her fully. "Not once. Not for a single moment. Lillian, every day I spend with you, I become more certain that you are exactly who I have been looking for." He reached up and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "You make me laugh. You challenge me to think differently. You see possibilities I miss. You are kind and strong and honest. Why would I doubt any of that?" "Because I am not what people expect you to want," Lillian said quietly. "Then people need to expand their expectations," Daniel replied. "Lillian, I am tired of living by other people's rules and expectations. I want to build a life based on what actually works, what actually makes me happy, and you make me happy." One evening, about 2 months into their courtship, they sat on the porch of Daniel's ranch house watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Daniel had been quieter than usual all day, and Lillian sensed he had something on his mind. "Lillian," Daniel said finally, taking her hand, "I need to tell you something. What is it?" "That night at the social, when I chose you, some people thought I was making a foolish choice based on pity or stubbornness. My brother even wrote me a letter telling me I was embarrassing the family by courting someone so unsuitable." Lillian felt her heart sink. "What did you tell him?" "I told him to mind his own business and that I was going to marry you if you would have me." Lillian's eyes widened. "Marry?" Daniel pulled a small box from his pocket and opened it to reveal a simple gold band with a small diamond. Lillian Foster, these past 2 months have been the happiest I have had in years. You are everything I hoped you would be and more. You are strong, intelligent, kind, and yes, beautiful. Not despite your height or your strength, but in part because of them. You are exactly what I have been looking for, even before I knew what that was. He slipped off the porch rail and knelt on one knee. I know this is relatively quick, but I am certain of my feelings. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Lillian felt tears streaming down her face. Daniel, are you sure? You could have anyone. Someone prettier, someone more delicate, someone who is not you, Daniel interrupted gently. Lillian, I do not want anyone else. I want you. Your strength, your intelligence, your kindness, your spirit. All of you, exactly as you are. I want to build a life with you, work this ranch with you, grow old with you. He stood and cupped her face in his hands. The question is not whether I am sure. The question is whether you can trust that I see you, really see you, and still choose you. Not settling, not compromising, but genuinely choosing you because you are exactly right. Lillian looked into his eyes and saw nothing but love and certainty. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I will marry you. Daniel pulled her into his arms and kissed. Her and Lillian felt something inside her that had been closed and guarded finally open. For the first time in her life, she felt truly chosen, truly wanted, truly valued for exactly who she was. They were married a month later in the same town hall where they had met. The room was full of people, some supportive, others simply curious, to see the odd match everyone had been talking about. Lillian wore a beautiful blue dress she had sewn herself, and Margaret, her sister, stood beside her as her attendant. Margaret had apologized for doubting Daniel's intentions, had come to see that he truly did love Lillian. During the ceremony, when the preacher asked if anyone objected to the union, there was a moment of tense silence. Then Cobb, the man who had called Lillian an ox at the Bachelor's Choice Social, stood up. Daniel tensed, ready to defend his bride, but Cobb held up his hands. I am not objecting. I am apologizing. He looked at Lillian. Miss Foster, I said cruel things that night. I mocked you for your appearance. I judged you without knowing anything about you. I was wrong, and I am sorry. You and Daniel, you clearly suit each other well, and I wish you happiness. It was not an eloquent apology, but it was sincere. Lillian nodded her acceptance, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. Maybe some people could learn and change. The ceremony continued, and when Daniel was told he could kiss his bride, he did so with such obvious love and joy that even the skeptics in the room had to smile. At the reception afterward, Daniel never left Lillian's side. When people congratulated them, he was quick to praise his wife's intelligence and capability. When someone made a veiled comment about Lillian's size, Daniel shut it down immediately, with a firm but polite statement about respecting his wife. Their marriage was everything Lillian had never dared to hope for. Daniel treated her as an equal partner in all things. She worked beside him on the ranch, and her strength that had once been mocked became an asset. She could help with tasks. That would have been too physically demanding for a more delicate woman, and Daniel valued her for it. More than that, he loved her. Genuinely, completely loved her. He told her she was beautiful and meant it. He was proud to introduce her as his wife. He never tried to diminish her or make her smaller to fit someone else's idea of femininity. Lillian proved to be everything Daniel had hoped. She was an excellent ranch manager, improving their breeding program and implementing irrigation systems that increased their hay production. She was respected by the ranch hands and neighboring ranchers for her knowledge and fairness. 2 years after their wedding, Lillian gave birth to twin daughters. Both girls inherited their mother's height and build, and from their first moments, Daniel made sure everyone knew these were qualities to celebrate, not hide. As the girls grew, they faced some of the same challenges their mother had faced. But this time, they had two parents who taught them that their strength was a gift, not a flaw. One evening, when the twins were about 5 years old, the family attended a town social. Lillian overheard two women whispering about how big her daughters were, how they would never find husbands if they kept growing like that. Before Lillian could respond, one of the twins, Clara, spoke up. "My papa says being big is good. He says Mama is the strongest person he knows, and he chose her because of it." The other twin, Rose, added, "Papa says anyone who does not like how we look is not worth our time anyway." The two gossiping women looked embarrassed and moved away. Daniel, who had been standing nearby with their son, born a year after the twins, came over and scooped both girls into his arms. "That is exactly right," he told them. "You are perfect, exactly as you are, and do not let anyone tell you different." He looked at Lillian with love and pride. "Just like your mother." Years later, when people would ask Daniel why he had chosen Lillian that night at the Bachelor's Choice Social, he would always give the same answer. "I chose her because she was exactly what I was looking for. Strong enough to handle ranch life, intelligent enough to improve everything she touched, and brave enough to keep showing up despite years of rejection. I chose her because when everyone else saw someone to mock, I saw someone to admire. And I chose her because from the moment I saw her standing on that stage, holding her head high despite their cruelty, I knew she was the one." And when people would ask Lillian why she had accepted Daniel's proposal despite all the gossip and judgment, she would smile and say, "Because he saw me, really saw me, not as too big or too tall or too much, but as exactly right. And being loved for exactly who you are, without needing to change or diminish yourself, that is worth more than all the pretty faces and delicate frames in the world." Their daughters grew up strong and confident, eventually marrying men who valued their strength and intelligence. The ranch prospered under Daniel and Lillian's joint management, becoming one of the most successful operations in the territory. And every year on their anniversary, Daniel would take Lillian back to the town hall and point to the spot where she had stood that night. "That is where I found my treasure," he would say, "the one everyone else overlooked because they could not see past their own narrow expectations." And Lillian, who had spent so many years believing she was unlovable, would hold her husband's hand and know that sometimes the greatest love stories begin not with love at first sight, but with someone brave enough to look past appearances and see the true worth of another person's heart. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe for more tales of finding acceptance and love beyond society's narrow standards. Comment below about what this story meant to you or share a time when someone saw your true worth. Thank you for listening and for believing that everyone deserves to be seen, valued, and loved exactly as they are.